In this session, we shall understand how the quantity of water is a matter of concern for designing a water supply scheme based on various demands of individuals in a town or a city. That is like whenever an civil engineer or a designer is given the duty of designing a water supply scheme for a particular section of the community, it becomes very important upon him to first of all evaluate the amount of water available and the amount of water demanded by the public, that is the beneficiary. In fact, the first study is to consider the demand, and then the second requirement is to find out the sources to fulfill that demand. In a sense, like whether we have found out or identified the source which can fulfill the need or the demand. Many a times, the compromise between these two is very important. While planning a water supply scheme, it is necessary to find out not only the total yearly water demand but also to assess the required average rate of flow. And we usually term that as draft, and the variations in these rates are also important. The following quantities are therefore generally assessed and recorded, and those are total annual volume represented in liters or million liters, annual average rate of draft in liters per day, annual average rate of draft in liters per day per person, and usually it is known as the per capita demand, and average rate of draft in liters per day per service. Above all these things, the very important is to understand the fluctuations in flows expressed in terms of percentage ratios of maximum or minimum yearly or monthly or daily or even hourly rates to their corresponding average values. It is very difficult to precisely assess the quantity of water demand by the public since there are many variable factors affecting the water consumption. Henceforth, certain thumb rules and empirical formulas are generally used to assess the quantity, which may give fairly accurate results. The use of a particular method or a formula for a particular case has therefore to be decided by the intelligence and foresightedness of the engineer. The various types of water demands which a city may have may be broken down into the following classes: domestic demand, commercial demand, industrial demand, public demand, fire demand, compensate losses. So we shall get to know what these individual demands mean with. The domestic demand includes the water required in the houses for drinking, cooking, bathing, washing of clothes and utensils, sanitary blocks, private vehicles, gardening, etc. The requirement of water for domestic animals is also included in this demand. In Indian towns or cities, the domestic consumption of water under normal condition is considered as 135 LPCD, that is liter per capita per day, as per IS 1172 1971. In developed countries, the water demand is very high, and this is because of their advanced lifestyle. Next is the commercial demand. It includes the water demand in commercial centers like office buildings, hotels, restaurants, shopping centers, cinema halls, motor garages, laundries, dairies, etc. For this purpose, the demand is assumed as 25 liter to 40 liter per capita per day. The industrial water demand represents the water demand of industries which are existing or likely to be started in future in a city for which the water supply should be planned, and this quantity will thus vary with the number and the type of industries present in the city, and it even depends on the category of the industry. The ordinary per capita consumption on account of industrial needs of a city is generally considered as 50 liters per person per day, which may suffice not only to meet the water demand of small scattered industry without catering to larger industries. Separate provision will have to be made to meet the water demand of such specific industries. Their requirement have to be approximated on the basis of the nature and the magnitude of each industry, and very specifically the quantity of water required per unit of production. The potential for industrial expansion should also be investigated so that the availability of the water supply may attract such industries and add economic prosperity for the community. So this is because there are likely the possibilities of expansion of every small and medium industries. Some of the industries may develop their own water supplies and may place a very little demand on the public water supplies. In industrial cities, the per capita water requirement may finally be computed as high as 450 LPCD in comparison to the normal industrial requirement of 50 LPCD. The approximate quantities of water required by different industries per unit of their production will be ascertained based on what is the type of industry it is. For example, an automobile industry may require only 40 kiloliters a day, while the sugar manufacturing or the crushed cane industry may require around 1 to 2 kiloliters. While if we are just talking about the expanded industries or a large industry like the paper mill or something like that, so the water requirement there is around 200 to 400 kiloliters. This is what the difference is, and henceforth the demand has to be taken care with respect to the individual industries. The next is the public demand. This includes the quantity of water required for public utility purposes, which includes public parks, gardening, washing and sprinkling on roads, usage of water in fountains. For most of the water supply schemes in India, these needs are not believed as essentials because only a nominal amount, not exceeding 5% of the total consumption, may be added to meet this demand, and a figure of around 10 liter per head per day is usually added on this account. The next demand is the fire demand, which is a very uncertain demand. In thickly populated and industrial areas, the fire breakout are uncertain and they may lead to serious damages if not controlled effectively. In big cities, therefore, generally, wherein the firefighting squads are always trained, that is, the firefighting personnel who require sufficient quantity of water so as to throw it over the fire at high speeds. A provision should be made for this in the modern water supply scheme such that there won't be any short of fire, or the quantity of water required for extinguishing fires should be easily available and always kept stored in storage reservoirs. The fire hydrants are usually fitted in the water mains at about 100 to 150 meters apart, and firefighting pumps are immediately connected into them by the fire brigade personnel as soon as there is a fire breakout. These pumps then throw water on the fire at very high pressures so as to bring it under control, and the minimum water pressure available at this fire hydrant should be in the order of 100 to 150 kilonewton per meter square. That comes around 10 to 15 meter of water head, and this should be maintained even after 4 to 5 hours of constant use of fire hydrant. Generally, in a modern fire breakout, three jet streams are simultaneously thrown from each hydrant, one on the burning property and one each on adjacent property on either side of the burning property. The discharge of each stream should be about 1100 liters per minute. Finally, the water required to compensate losses in thefts and waste are also included. This is because the water lost in leakage due to bad plumbing or damaged meters, stolen water due to unauthorized water connections, and other losses and waste has to be accomplished. These losses should be taken into account while estimating the total requirements. These losses can be reduced by taking careful maintenance and universal metering. Even in the best managed waterworks, this amount may, however, work to be as high as 15% of the total water consumption. The high rate of water consumption during a fire breakout affects the design of distribution system, and hence while designing the water supply scheme, the rate of fire demand is sometimes treated as a function of population, and they'll be worked out on the basis of certain empirical formulas which are mentioned here. National Board of Fire under Writer's formula, and this is for a central congested high valued city. The formula would be used as given here. While for a residential city, the calculation of the water requirement for firefighting will vary depending on the type of the buildings. That means it may be a low building, high rise building, high value residences, which includes apartments, and it is even different for densely built up sections.